Hey, what's up, YouTube fans? So what I want to talk about in this video, right, is this argument that a lot of people will make for why they think that there has to be a God. That they'll say why does the universe exist? And they'll be like, you really think that there was just nothing, and that then there was an explosion, and that made everything come into existence? And it's like, no, that's not actually what I think. That's a total misrepresentation of the Big Bang. Because, yeah, it's like there's like a big misconception about the Big Bang, right? That people will think that the Big Bang is where there's like first nothing, and that then there's an explosion that brings everything into existence. And people will think that that's like what atheists think is like the origin of the universe, that we think that there was first nothing and that there was then like this just like big explosion, like kaboom, and then like it brought everything into existence. But that's a complete misrepresentation. That's not what the Big Bang is about, right? The Big Bang isn't actually even intended to explain the origin of the universe. And as for like the question about why would there be something rather than nothing, there may have never been a time when there was nothing, right? Because at the beginning, many scientists actually think that at the beginning of time, there was likely already matter and energy already existing at the very first moment of time, right? So as soon as time started, at the first moment of time, there may have already existed matter and energy, right? And so therefore, there didn't ever have to be a change where you go from nothing to something. There may have always been something. There may have never been a time when there was nothing, right? And so therefore, it wouldn't defy like the laws of conservation of mass or conservation of energy, right? Because it would only defy those laws if there was a time when there was nothing, and then you go from that to matter and energy existing. But if matter and energy already existed at the beginning of time, then there wouldn't be any defying of the laws of conservation of mass or the law of conservation of energy, right? And so, and then also worth noting, right, is that at the beginning of the universe, right, there were no planets or stars, none of that. There weren't even atoms, right? But the universe still did exist in some form. There was already matter and energy. It wasn't just nothing, right? And the formation of planets and stars, right, that's much later after the origin of the universe, right? And, you know, it comes down to, you know, forces of nature like gravity, right? Because because of gravity, right, objects fall down to the earth, right? You know, just, you know, pick up a rock and let it go, it'll fall down to the earth, right, because of gravity. So objects attract in space because of gravity. And so therefore, it really isn't too difficult to understand then how you could get the formation of things like planets, right? Because objects in space will gradually move together because of gravity, right? And so therefore becoming more and bigger and bigger and bigger clumps as they come together because of gravity, right? And of course, there's other natural forces involved, right? So it isn't really as like confusing as they make it out to be. There isn't like some type of like crazy like magical event or anything, you know. It's just like, I mean, gravity is a thing that we observe in the modern era. It's not like some like type of like it's not like some like thing someone made up just to explain this. Obviously, we already know gravity exists. So in any event, some people will be unsatisfied with saying that the universe doesn't have a cause for its existence, because they'll just feel like intuitively that there has to be a cause, or that it, just seems really random for it to not have a cause. But you could just as well ask, if a God created the universe, why does this God exist without a cause, right? They would have no problem with saying that he doesn't have a cause, right? So why not just save a step and just say that the universe doesn't have a cause, right? And they will try and say that the reason that the universe needs a cause but God doesn't is they'll have this made up law called the law of causality, where they will say that everything that begins to exist has a cause. And so if something begins to exist, they say that that means that it has to have a cause. Whereas if it doesn't begin to exist, they think that means that it doesn't need a cause, right? And so they'll say that since we know the universe began to exist, that they'll say that's the reason why it needs a cause. Whereas they'll say that since God is outside of space and time, that he doesn't need a cause. But okay, so this is the thing, the supposed law of causality is not a law of physics. It's not something that's scientifically proven. It's a philosophical idea that's actually not proven to be true, that's how it works, that if something begins to exist, it needs a cause, whereas if it doesn't begin to exist, that it doesn't need a cause. But they'll try and say that it's justified by our experience, because they'll say that we never they'll say that we never observe anything beginning to exist without a cause. But see, this is the problem with that argument, right? Is that everything that we ever observe begin to exist is just matter and energy rearranged in different ways, right? Like this car I'm driving in, it began to exist at some point, but it's all of the matter that the car is made out of already existed, right? The matter and energy already existed. We never observe matter and energy beginning to exist. We only observe these things being rearranged in different ways, right? And so therefore, it's a fundamentally different thing with observing matter and energy beginning to exist, right? Because unlike everything else we observe to begin to exist, everything else we observe to begin to exist is just matter and energy being rearranged in different ways. So all we're really observing is not something fundamentally new beginning, but we're just observing already existing things being rearranged, right? Whereas with the origin of matter and energy, it's not a matter of something already existing rearranging, right? And so that's fundamentally different from anything else we ever observe to begin to exist, right? So therefore, it isn't really applicable to our everyday experience, right? Because like with something like this car, right? Yes, it began to exist, but it's not a fundamental, like all of the parts that it's made out of already existed before that. We never observe any of those parts begin to exist. All we really observe is the parts, matter and energy moving in space, right? Moving in different areas of space, right? But we don't actually observe them coming into existence, right? Matter and energy. We never observe a fundamentally new matter and energy beginning to exist, right? And so our experience cannot prove whether or not that's actually how it works, right? There's no scientific law that says that's how it works. The law of causality is just a philosophical idea, not actually something proven to be a thing, right? And so all of that put together then, right, we have no good reason to think that the universe needs to have a cause, right? And then this, what else is worth noting, that even if, let's say, suppose that that if it did need to have a cause, we still wouldn't know that it would have to be some type of like anthropomorphic human-like thing with like intelligence, right? And like that knows, like it could, like, even if it did need a cause, it could just be some like unconscious thing, right? It wouldn't have to be like some type of like human like thing with like intelligence like that, and like capable of like thought and things like that, which is typically what they'll jump to the conclusion of, right? Which is completely unjustified. All right, that's all for now. See you guys.